5 students are not proficient writers. The best 5-paragraph essay starts with an interesting hook to grab the reader's attention, a clear and direct thesis, 3 supporting paragraphs with evidence to back up your thesis, and a conclusion that does nothing for your essay but restate everything you just said in a condescending manner. In this video, I will give you some tips on how to write an intro paragraph without panicking, how to write body paragraphs and incorporate research, and whether or not a conclusion paragraph is really necessary. For the intro, we will talk about the hook and what the problems are with typical ones suggested in high school writing and what you can do to overcome that hurdle, how to outline the main ideas of your essay, and thesis writing. Then we will move on to body paragraphs and research. We will show you how to write clear and organized body paragraphs and how to use online resources your teachers tell you not to use and how to navigate the ones they do tell you to use. After you're done with 3 supporting paragraphs, you're supposed to sum up your essay in a conclusion. We're actually going to help you determine when a conclusion is needed and when it isn't. After watching these videos, you'll be able to write an intro without staring at your screen for hours. You'll have a better understanding of the body paragraph and the research you'll need to do for them, and you'll be able to effectively conclude your essay.
That's actually not how it's done. This person didn't necessarily do anything bad or wrong, but probably what they were doing was just trying to fulfill the expectations and checking off the checklist of a rubric like this one. This leads to an essay that is formulaic, boring, and completely dull. What we want to try and do is teach you how to escape the horror and madness of rewriting the same formula over and over throughout high school and college. The intention of these rubrics isn't necessarily bad, it's actually quite good. I think the idea behind it is that you're just helping prepare students to write later on, sort of like how in football you have to learn the rules before you can actually play the game. However, the actual effect of this is that students get stuck trying to fulfill the same expectations over and over again. They think they need a hook, 3 supporting points, and a thesis in every single thing they write. This means that they don't know how to write blog posts, professional emails, they don't know how to write lab reports, or business writing, and many other important kinds of writing. In fact, even in creative writing, students sometimes feel the need to write a conclusion paragraph, even though it's not necessary for the story. So what we need to do is break out of that and teach students how to write in other styles and feel free to break out of the mold and write something new and different. The other problem with this is that it makes it much easier for teachers to grade without even really thinking. Without taking the student's style and experience into account, they're just looking to see if their grammar is correct and whether or not they've hit all those main points. It also makes it much easier for students to write without really thinking about the subject. All they have to do is find a couple different sources, different quotes, worst of all, a dictionary definition, and they don't have to do any thinking. The formula does the thinking for them. And this results in a lot of anxiety around writing, because once you have to write something where you have to put thought into it, you have no idea what you're doing. So what we're going to try to do is help you learn how to do this in a way that is much less painful, and you might actually learn something from your writing.
So introductions are always the worst thing for me to write. I spend hours sitting, staring at my computer, having no clue what to say, and the whole 5-paragraph essay thing doesn't really help because it's always like you have to have this amazing hook to grab your reader's attention, and I'm always thinking I have absolutely no idea what I can even say that will grab anyone's attention because I know nothing about this topic. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about for this video. We're going to talk about the hook first. Honestly, the best way to write your introduction is to write it last. So after you've written the whole entire paper, your last paragraph, your conclusion, is going to be your introduction. So when you're concluding your writing, you then finish with the introduction paragraph. Now there are several common tactics that people use to avoid coming up with their own intro sentence, which is probably the most daunting part of the introduction. They'll like to use a quote or a statistic, an interesting fact, a rhetorical question, or they'll use my least favorite, a dictionary definition of something that they think is their the main word in their whole entire paper. Now these sentences can work in some cases, but most of the time it doesn't work that well. It kind of comes off cheesy, or it comes off lacking in substance. So Things I like to avoid when I'm writing an introduction is also this essay will be about. I want to talk about. In this essay I will go over. Like, we get it, you're writing an essay, just do what you say you want to do. Don't tell us about it, just dive right in. You want to start talking about your topic and then lead us up to your thesis, and then the reader will figure out where your essay is going from there. You don't have to, take us baby step by baby step. So the first sentence of your essay is not just used to hook the reader, but it's also used to inform them about what you're writing. It might be a good idea to point out a problem or make a statement about the topic or give an opinion. The hook shouldn't be like a clickbait item. I know that whenever I'm on Facebook, those articles that kind of cut off, you're reading it, it says, Kim Kardashian wears huge purple and then all the dots, and you click on it and you have to go through all these filler advertisements to get to actually what it's talking about, because for some reason you're interested but you don't really care. You're just kind of clicking on it because you want to hear what it has to say, but you don't you're not super invested in it, and you just eventually just zone out, and because you can't find what you're looking for, and then you just go back to the main Facebook page and start scrolling. You don't give a shit. You click on it and there's nothing there of substance, so you kind of give up. So that's not what your hook should be. It should be something that introduces the topic in a way that relates to the rest of the paragraph. I would also recommend writing the introduction sentence to your introduction paragraph last, just like you're doing the introduction last in your essay. And even better, you can use one of those fake hook strategies that we discussed that were not so good, to kind of help you write your next sentence, and then deleting that hook. So if you're gonna write you took a quote, in the first video where she talks about the 4 out of 5 students, you can write that and then write a response to that, and then delete the quote and the statistic, and you'll have something more substantial to work with. Another thing you can do is tell a story or an anecdote from real life examples. So if you're talking about a book or a movie, tell us about a moment in that story that was relevant to the main point of your essay. Stories are usually more compelling and more relatable than bland facts. If I were to tell you a story about my writing experiences, that's probably more interesting to you than if you were to hear that 4 out of 5 students, aren't that great at writing. But if you hear something from me, it's more relatable and you'll be able to understand it better, and it's more, it's not clickbait, but it's more compelling and you're more intrigued into reading the rest of the essay. You could also surprise us with a debatable or unpopular opinion. Usually when you hear something that you completely disagree with, you're kind of just oh my gosh, how did this person come to this conclusion? So then they'll be pulled in to read your essay, but it won't be something cheesy or boring or lame, like a statistic or a fact or a quote from someone who probably died 600 years ago that no one can relate to anymore. Keep in mind is when you're writing the introduction sentence to your introduction paragraph, is you don't have to keep this within the limits of one sentence. It's not always going to be something that can be said in a couple of words, this hooking phrase or whatever. That's what we're trying to get away from. If you have to introduce your topic with something 3 or 4 sentences or whatever, as long as you get the point across and it's not cheesy or lame or high school-esque writing, it's gonna sound a lot better. The next element to your introduction paragraph is the 3 main ideas that you're going to be giving throughout the essay. This is kind of like a checkpoint, a fill in the blank, but this doesn't have to be something that you write one sentence where you say point A, point B, point C, or the evidence that you'll be giving for your thesis, to prove your thesis or whatever. It really should just flow along with the introduction. So when you're letting it flow, you can just be free writing at this point. You can always go back after you're done writing to edit to make sure it's organized and it's clear to what you're trying to say, because kind of letting things flow out like you're free writing. So after you're done with this free write of your introduction, you can go back and clarify what you were trying to say, so that way it's organized and academic. So the last part of your introduction is your thesis statement. Now, a thesis statement is the answer to the question that you're asking in the paper. It's what you're trying to prove throughout the paper. So when you get to the end, everyone agrees with what the statement that you've made in your thesis. So when you're writing your thesis, you want to make sure it's focused and clear. You don't want to try and tackle too much. So if you're writing a paper or an essay on a book that you've read, you don't want to try and talk about the themes throughout the book and the setting and the characterization of all of the characters. It's just too much. You want to be focused and clear on one thing because you're trying to win one argument, not trying to win 10. When you're writing your thesis, the main thing you want to think about is what is the one thing you're trying to say, the one thing you want your reader to take away. So think of it like this. We're all super into Twitter, a lot of people are into social media, and a lot of teenagers are into Twitter. So if you had to write your thesis statement as a tweet, how would you put that into 140 characters or less? Obviously your thesis statement can be longer than that, but you want to try and keep it as simple and focused to get your main point across. I know a lot of people are able to do that with tweets, so you can obviously do it with a thesis statement. You just have to focus on doing that. After you've mapped out your argument in your 3 body paragraphs, you'll have to decide whether or not you actually need a conclusion. So the problem with conclusions is that these paragraphs frequently come across as just summarizing the entire essay and not really stating something that adds to it. You're just kind of, adding on for length or the requirement of having a conclusion. This doesn't contribute anything to your essay. If your conclusion paragraph just exists to summarize your entire essay, then you can delete it. But if you want to have a satisfying end to your essay, a conclusion can be a very powerful thing. The reader can come away with the knowledge or the ideas that you want them to. So you should summarize, but it shouldn't be the whole paragraph. You should bring it together and show how it connects and how it supports your thesis and how you've won your argument. The main thing to think about is what are the implications of your essay. So your conclusion should really be retitled to be the implications paragraph, not the conclusion paragraph, because it helps you think of it in a different way. So you want to say something new if you can, but not a whole new subtopic, but something that is related to your essay, but something that you haven't said quite yet. It's kind of like your mic drop. You drop the mic, people will be able to understand why your topic of your essay is worth learning about. You could end with a story or describing something or asking you questions or a final analysis, but you want to avoid a cliche statement about how super incredibly important and emotional and meaningful everything is. Honestly, all you have to think about to remember your maybe concluding couple of sentences in your conclusion is that this is where you stop and you drop the mic and everything's over.